Welcome back to another episode of Grizzly True Crime. My name is Gilgo, and in today's episode, we're going to be looking at an update from the Suffolk County Police Department relating to the recent arrest of James Burke. He's the former police chief, disgraced former police chief, who was already arrested and convicted in 2016 for a whole bunch of sex-related crimes, and then he spent 46 months in prison, was released in 2018, and he's just been arrested again, this time for soliciting a male sex worker. So of course this has got everyone very interested because you just never know what other charges he could be facing. Could he be related at all to, connected at all to anything to do with the Gilgo Beach murders? There's already been a lot of speculation that he could have been at the house where Shannon Gilbert was last seen. If you're not sure about anything that I'm saying, I'd highly recommend checking out the playlist, which is linked in the description box for you, so that you can catch up on the case, because we've done a deep dive from the beginning all the way to now. This is really just an update, so let's hear what the police have to say.
I'm here with Steve Layton, as well as some of the men from the Suffolk County Parks Police. Due to numerous complaints about activity over at Vietnam Memorial in Farmingville, members assigned to the Suffolk County Park Rangers Targeted Response Unit conducted an operation utilizing plainclothes rangers. At 10:15 a.m. today, during this operation, they engaged one individual who was soliciting for sexual engagement. Due to the actions that I am not going to share, this individual was placed under arrest. The Rangers ascertained that our perpetrator involved was identified as James Burke, former chief of the Suffolk County Police Department. He was transported to the 6th Precinct by Park Rangers for processing. He's being charged with offering a sex act, indecent exposure, public lewdness, and criminal solicitation, 5th degree. Additional charges may be pending. And we are still currently trying to ascertain if he's still on federal probation. I open up the floor for any questions at this time.
Was it female plainclothes officers, male plainclothes officers?
It was just male plainclothes officers at the during the operation.
When you say numerous complaints about the activity, can you expand on that a little bit further?
Sure, I'll have Steve Layton talk about the complaints that we received over there. Steve?
We have our targeted response unit within the Rangers that we get to problematic areas within the county park system. Graffiti, vandalism, quality of life issues, theft. And the Vietnam Veterans Memorial is one of those areas that we've received numerous complaints about quality of life issues up there. So we're attempting to do our best to curtail that.
And were there complaints of people soliciting sex?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. How long had the plainclothes officers been out there before the arrest took place?
They were only out there a few minutes, to be honest with you. They had just arrived at the location.
Did your guys recognize him, and what was their? Did you describe the reaction at seeing him?
The ranger who made the arrest, Mr. Burke, did not know who he was.
I mean, did the ranger know who Mr. Burke was?
No, not at first, not until he identified himself and said who he was. Do you know who I am?
So he said that to the ranger at
Yes.
one point?
Yeah.
Was he attempting to get out of being arrested?
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
Could you describe that?
Well, he was expressing to us how this would, be a public humiliation for him and such. So.
How did the arrest come to be? Did he proposition the plainclothes officer? Did the officer see something? What prompted the arrest?
I'm not going to get into the details of that. Mr. Burke is still being processed by the detectives inside.
Was anyone else arrested? The person that was accused of?
Due to it happening so fast, as soon as the plainclothes rangers got there this morning, that was the only apprehension they had made this morning at the memorial.
Are you going to go back?
We've been there several times.
We're going to take one more question.
we've heard a lot of rumors going on around this case that there may have been drugs taken from the former chiefs, that there was maybe a minor involved. Can you address some of those?
Yeah, so we're not going to talk about the little details that are circulating regarding rumors and what was he carrying and what was in his possession. I shared the charges with you regarding what he's being charged with. If you have any further questions, we could have our PIO get in contact with you, but that's where we stand at this time regarding the charges to Jim Burke.
Commissioner, you said you reached out to the federal agencies to see if he's still under parole?
We did.
You haven't heard back?
We're waiting for a response from them.
I know this all predates your time here, but do you have any reaction to...
I do not. No comment at this time.
Thank you, everybody.
Today.
That's the end of that one. Let me show you this arrest video here. Have a look.
Breaking now on News 12, former Police Chief James Burke has been arrested. Right now, we don't know many details, but we're told he was arrested this morning by Suffolk Park Rangers in Brookhaven. Burke was previously convicted back in 2012 for beating a suspect in police custody and covering it up. He was sentenced to 46 months in prison, and we'll bring you the latest details once we get them.
Okay. So that's the update we have right now. Now what I'm going to do is put an article in that we'd read through before in case you missed that live stream, just so that you can understand the backstory of the Gilgo Beach murders investigation and the corruption and everything surrounding James Burke. He really is a dark horse and a red flag, and I'll be keeping a close eye on him to see what other charges he'll be facing and what happens next. The suspect in the Gilgo Beach murders, if you didn't know, is Rex Heuermann, a 59-year-old architect who worked in Manhattan, New York, and lived in Massapequa Park. And he has been charged with 3 out of the 4 Gilgo Beach murders, with the 4th charge still pending. He's the prime suspect in that murder. And the district attorney has said that they're only focusing on those 4 now, and then they'll expand from there. So the other investigations continue. There has been speculation that it could be someone else, right, that may have used the same site to put the bodies. As unlikely as that sounds, it is possible, because it really is the perfect place to do such a thing. John Bitrolf has been discussed quite a bit as a suspect for sharing that ground, but then James Burke also comes with a lot of red flags. I mean, his background and how he was such an obstacle in the investigation. There's rumors that he may have been involved in Shannon Gilbert's death, which is actually the missing persons case that started the search and eventually found 10 other bodies. I mean, it's an unbelievable story. And to see that he was arrested again is quite a shocking development. So I don't blame anyone for being like, oh my word, look at this. What if he gets charged with something else? We just never know. And then Rex Heuermann, when he went on a date with that lady called Nikki Brass in 2015, she said that he was, saying, do you know about the Gilgo Beach murders? And she said, of course, I'm a true crimer. He was then saying, well, how do you think he got rid of the bodies? And then he said, maybe he walked through the marsh. And then he also said it would be really easy for a cop to do. Cop could do that. So that was interesting. Meaning, who knows? Who knows if James Burke is just... I can't say just. I mean, it's terrible, all the things he's done. But will they now get his DNA, and will that in any way be connected to any of these victims? I'm not going to say I would be completely shocked. So I'm not trying to put a theory out there. I'm just like, oh, whoa, he's been arrested again? So officials say former Suffolk police chief. He was the police chief and really hampering the investigation. James Burke has been arrested. Also, before I continue, I'm going to put that whole read-through of the article right at the end of when I'm done talking about this little update here, so that you can watch it again and refresh your memory, or if you missed it, you can see it again, see me read through it, listen to the info, and hopefully we can piece this all together and be like, what is going on here? So they say, officials say at approximately 10:15 a.m., Burke was arrested at the Suffolk County Vietnam Veterans Memorial Park. According to officials, Suffolk County Park Rangers Targeted Response Unit arrested Burke. Burke has been charged with offering a sex act, public lewdness, indecent exposure, and criminal solicitation, with additional potential charges pending. Burke was previously convicted in 2012 for beating a suspect in police custody and covering it up. Burke was sentenced to 46 months in prison. This is a developing story. So that's very interesting. This might just be a completely unrelated update, but to see the police chief, the former police chief, arrested again for pretty much the same or more acts, it just shows he cannot change that behavior. And there is speculation that he was involved in Shannon Gilbert's murder. He could have been at Joseph Brewer's house. There's a whole theory out there, which really is just a theory at this point. But imagine if he was. Imagine if this will help solve some of the other cases. We just don't know. We'll have to see, and I will keep you posted. So what I'm going to do now is put that article in here that I already read through, so that you can just see the background in case you're like a little lost. Like, what are we actually talking about here? We're looking at the background of the investigation into the Gilgo Beach murders. Who murdered those victims found on Gilgo Beach? And a little bit beyond. There was also Fire Island Jane Doe, who was recently identified. There's also, it's being stated, there's rumor that they're going to be identifying Peaches and Baby Doe, and possibly even the unidentified Asian male who was found on the beach very soon. So make sure you are subscribed with your bell on in case there is a press conference. We know by now how New York rolls. They're just like, okay, we're going live. And then by the time we're even ready, they're already live. Okay, so we got to catch it. So make sure that you've got all your notifications set in case that happens. I find this quite interesting, and I'll definitely be keeping an eye on it. And I'm not even saying it doesn't have to have anything to do with the murders. However, it's very interesting to watch this developing story of, whoa, that former police chief. So what else was he up to? What are these other potential charges? What else did he do? Let all those skeletons come out the closet, because there's probably a lot more to the story than we know. If you didn't know, this is the former police chief, James Burke. It's quite a dark horse, this one. Very naughty man. So I'll be looking out for any updates. Send me them as well. Thank you to everyone who's emailed me all these updates and tweeted at me and everything, or X as it's not called now. I don't know. Did you X at me? Thank you for sending me all these updates. I really appreciate it. I've been looking into it, and yeah, I'm as surprised as you. Like, oh my word, he got arrested again. What did you do this time? Let's see. Let's see how it goes, and I wonder what his sentencing will be now. So we continue on. Gilgo Beach killer hunt slowed by infighting between prosecutors. It's actually a topic I wanted to touch on for a while. I'm glad there's like one place now. It's all in this, a lot in this article by Alexandra Heel and Gus Garcia Roberts from August 1st, 2023. A decade after the discovery of 11 bodies near Gilgo Beach sparked the search for one of America's most elusive serial killers, a Long Island District Attorney's Office turned its attention to an aging former police officer. Newly equipped with advanced technology, the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office analyzed old cell phone data to hone in on a shrinking list of suspects who had lived in one sleepy neighborhood not far from the shore. Chief among them, the former officer, whose initials matched those on a belt. That's interesting. Chief among them, the former officer, whose initials matched those on a belt used to bind one of the victims. By 2021, excitement grew among prosecutors that they were on the verge of finally closing the case. But there was a problem. The homicide detectives chasing the lead were bordering on mutiny. Prosecutors believed the detectives refused to follow orders and clashed with federal partners, multiple high-level law enforcement officials familiar with the case. Said. Detectives, meanwhile, felt that the district attorney at the time, Tim Sinney, was forcing them to investigate leads they had already ruled out, while ratcheting up pressure to solve the case before his 2021 re-election bid. The tension grew so high that, at Sinney's urging, the case's longtime lead detective was removed. Amid that squabbling, a decade-old witness tip concerning the model of a pickup truck linked to the suspected killer went ignored. Last month, under the new district attorney who unseated Sinney, that tip finally led to the arrest of another suspect who lived blocks away from the ex-officer, Rex Uhrman, a 59-year-old architect who is charged with 3 of the murders and under suspicion for another. The previously unreported recent infighting between prosecutors and detectives illustrates how official missteps fueled years of false turns and dysfunction as the infamous killing spree remained unsolved. The Washington Post found through a review of records and interviews with more than 20 legal, law enforcement, and political insiders familiar with the case, many of whom spoke on the condition of anonymity. That's my worst word. Anonymity. I can never say it, I'm sorry. Anonymously, okay, because they were, if you listen to my audiobook, you know I recorded it about 20 times. Okay, because they were not authorized to discuss the case or feared retaliation. The investigation was hampered by political battles, deep-seated local resistance to federal investigators, and apparently apathy toward sex worker victims. Cindy said in a statement that he sought to remove the lead detective, Patrick Portela, because it became increasingly clear that he was not willing to effectively collaborate, including by refusing to share information with the FBI. We did hear from the police commissioner that the FBI was initially reluctant to work with them when they asked, right? They were like, not again, we don't want to, not from our experience. Yes, okay, but luckily they did. Cindy said that he was met with fierce resistance from within the police department when he initially advocated for the detective's removal, and noted that investigators under his successor solved the case in 18 months without Portela's involvement. Multiple former high-level law enforcement officials supported that Portela was removed due to complaints from FBI officials, but others disputed it, and none would speak on the record. The Suffolk County Police Department and the FBI declined to comment. Portela, who retired last year, declined to comment. Among current and former elected officials and investigators in this affluent, insular county of 1.5 million residents, which has one of the highest paid police forces in the nation, initial relief and elation at Hurman's arrest has given way to finger-pointing and deflection as new information has cast national scrutiny on why it took so long to apprehend a suspect. They could have caught this guy a decade ago, said Phil Boyle, a former New York state senator whose district included the serial killer deposition site. They say dumping ground. Some are suggesting we use a new word. I've gotten suggestions. Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney, who oversaw the task force that arrested Hurman, said that the investigation was hindered during its early years due to a lot of dysfunction among the leadership and not a great relationship between the DA and the federal authorities. He declined to comment on the clash between his predecessor and homicide detectives. I like this district attorney. I think he's going to be so good. He said he's going to try the case himself, right? The cost of the investigation's lost years is still unknown. Hurman, prosecutors said, continued to contact sex workers as recently as this year. You're still buying burner phones and things. We saw that from the probable cause affidavit. Investigators in multiple jurisdictions are exploring whether Hurman can be linked to other unsolved murders, standard practice when an alleged serial killer is apprehended. Hurman has pleaded not guilty. His lawyer, Michael Brown, declined to comment. Steve Cohen, an attorney for the family of one of the victims, described the long delay in the case as grueling for loved ones. It's been an incredibly harsh ordeal for the family, beyond that which you can even imagine. Oh man. The victims, from the beginning, when a woman disappeared in May 2010, running toward the salty thickets near Gilgo Beach, where 10 other bodies or sets of remains would ultimately be found, the case suffered from apparent missteps. These included a lack of urgency by police officers to probe the disappearance of sex workers, according to lawyers for the families of victims. Shannon Gilbert, 23, was last seen alive by residents of the gated Long Island community of Oak Beach, having fled screaming She fled screaming from the house of a man who was paying for her sexual services. According to Lost Girls, Robert Colker's book, which I'm still listening to. If you guys are on Patreon, follow me there. You know that I tell you, like, how am I going to watch this A&E special? It's so long. And I did it all. Okay, I watched all of it. And now I'm busy with this audiobook. I think I've still got like 5.5 hours to go. But I'm working through it. And the Lisk podcast as well, which I would recommend. Very, very good. So much detail. Okay, so according to Lost Girls, Robert Colker's book on the then unsolved serial killings, it took months for Suffolk County Police to connect a 911 call from Gilbert the night she disappeared to a missing persons report filed by her family in New Jersey, and even longer to seek surveillance footage, which by then had been taped over. It took so long to release that 911 call. We recently looked at interviews that the police commissioner and the district attorney did, and they were like, part of their strategy to rebuild public trust was release that 911 call, which is actually when I started covering the case, which was in 2022, because I was like, oh my word, after all this time they're releasing that call. You know, I'd been wondering about this case for a long time. I traveled to New York quite a lot, and I was just like, what is this case? Like, why? So when they released that call, I'm like, oh my word, the mysterious call is released. So Yes, that was part of their strategy. And then they say 7 months after Gilbert vanished, when a police dog caught a scent several miles west, 4 bodies were discovered in the scratchy shrubs and reeds that separate a desolate highway from the sand. All of the women were white and petite and wrapped in burlap. Not all 3 out of 4, according to the probable cause affidavit, but yes. None was Gilbert. The woman who became... Also, I just want to interject here quickly. Some people say with my accent, it sounds like I'm saying woman like a singular person, but I'm saying it in my South African accent. Women would be like weird to me. So I'm just speaking in my normal South African accent, okay? We've got an international audience here. I mean multiple, as you can see. So, working on it. Okay, so they say none of them was Gilbert. The women, who became known as the Gilgo Four, were soon identified as Melissa Barthélemy, 24, Megan Waterman, 22, Maureen Brainard Barnes, 25, and Amberlynn Costello, 27. All had advertised escort services on Craigslist or other sites. In the coming months, Suffolk County Police and officers in neighboring Nassau County would find the remains of 6 more people along Ocean Parkway, some dating back to the 1990s. 3 were later identified as Jessica Taylor, 20, Valerie Mack, 24, and Karen Vergada, 34. The rest remain unidentified. Gilbert's skeletal remains were pulled from a marsh in December of 2011. The case sparked national headlines about a serial killer on the loose, along with a cottage industry of media, including the best-selling book, a Netflix drama, and multiple podcasts. Hey, and YouTube. But early investigators telegraphed a lack of alarm about the case. When asked at a public meeting in 2011 whether kids should be afraid to go out at night, Dominic Verone, who was chief of detectives, referred to the victims' status as sex workers. He called it a consolation that the murderer wasn't selecting citizens at large, he's selecting from a pool. Ew, bro. No, that's horrible. This statement and the underlying attitude it betrays demonstrate a sad truth about how law enforcement handles crimes against sex workers, differently than they would if the victim were not engaged in sex work, said Ariella Moskowitz, communications director of the advocacy group Decriminalize Sex Work. A lost lead. The county's don't know that one either. But politics invaded the investigation from the start. In 2011, Thomas Spoter and Richard Dormer, then the district attorney and police commissioner, respectively, publicly bickered about whether they believed there was one or more killers. Oh man. There was all this fighting. It's like almost like a macho show, you know what I mean? Fighting with each other. Come on. And a pivotal lead, one that would much later crack the case, was apparently mishandled. According to a bail application prosecutors filed following Heuermann's arrest, witnesses gave police a detailed description of a man who had visited Costello, who's Amberlynn Costello, right? One of the 4 women whose bodies were found by police in 2010, shortly before her disappearance. The witness reports in the document describe him as an ogre. Always smile at that, can't help it. It's like, he's an ogre. Oh man, okay, standing more than 6 feet 4 inches tall and driving a first-generation Chevrolet Avalanche. Tierney, the district attorney, confirmed in an interview that police had obtained the witness descriptions of the suspect's appearance and his truck around the time Costello's body was found in December of 2010. Oh my word. 3 homicide investigators who worked on the case at the time provided little clarity on why the tip appears to not have been chased down. One of them, a supervisor who oversaw the case starting in 2011, said that he was not made aware of the witness statements from the year earlier, which he called inexcusable and beyond weird. It raises questions about the adequacy of the initial investigation and whether a full court press was done. Eugene O'Donnell, a professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice and former NYPD officer and New York prosecutor, said of the lost statements. Very important statements. He said it cast doubt on whether the victims received the kind of investigation that they deserved. We're about halfway now through this article. Flawed new leader. Oh man, there's James Burke. Have you guys researched about this guy? Okay, in 2012, James Burke took over as chief of the 2,500 officer police department and inherited the Gilgo Beach case. Burke's nearly 4-year tenure, which ended in disgrace as he pleaded guilty to assaulting a prisoner and conspiring to cover it up, brought new dysfunction to the case. Earlier in his career, Burke was transferred from a street post after Internal Affairs Bureau investigators found he had an illicit sexual relationship with a felon in his precinct previously convicted of crimes including prostitution. Burke acknowledged the relationship but claimed he didn't know about the woman's long criminal history. Records in that case show that investigators probed Burke's interactions with at least one other sex worker in his precinct who said that Burke took her to a motel. But she said Burke just drank beer while she slept, and the IAB made no findings involving her. In a separate case, the IAB investigated whether Burke was involved in a prostitution ring, allegations he called absolutely false and which the IAB found to be unsubstantiated, records show. For John Ray, an attorney representing the families of two of the women found on the beaches, Burke's alleged history with sex workers conflicted with the case placed under his purview. So here's this guy with this predilection for sex workers investigating the murder of sex workers, Ray said. You don't bring the robber to come in and investigate robberies. Burke did not respond to a request for comment made through his lawyer. Burke also instilled a deep distrust of federal agencies, his colleagues said. We all hated the feds. Well, that's not helpful for the case, said former Lieutenant James Hickey, one of Burke's closest confidants in the department, later testified. Loki, welcome to Grizzly supporter. Okay, serial killer investigations are typically aided by federal authorities, but Burke and Spoda instead took steps to keep out the FBI, according to Cini, who said he reviewed a report in the case file in which detectives stated that they'd been barred from sharing case information with the FBI's BAU, the Behavioral Analysis Unit, known for profiling serial killers. Spoda has denied blocking the FBI, saying that federal agents previously assisted Suffolk investigators in the case before Burke took office, but that they were turned away in 2012 because their work was deemed duplicative by local authorities. According to the bail application, the four women Heuermann is accused of murdering each had contact with a person using an unregistered or burner phone shortly before their disappearances. In 2011, before Burke became chief, the federal agents started an analysis of related cell site records, Tierney said. That report, completed in 2012, first suggested that the killer lived in Massapequa Park and commuted to Midtown Manhattan. Like, damn. They zoned in on him, right? But local authorities then failed to narrow down the field of suspects, according to Cini and other law enforcement officials familiar with the case. That included not performing dumps of nearby cell towers, checking them for all phone activity during relevant periods. It's so important in every case. Even like the one we are following, the Rachel Morin case. Very important. The cell phone tower dumps. Okay, the first thing I thought about was the fact that tower dumps would have been a great investigative tool, said Larry Daniel, a forensic expert who has testified about cell site data in criminal cases. Burke's posture against federal authorities only intensified after December 14th of 2012, when the chief and his detectives beat up a shackled suspect who stole a duffel bag containing sex toys and PORN, I'm saying that for YouTube, not because I don't talk like an adult, from Burke's truck, according to later indictments and court testimony. Federal prosecutors described a criminal conspiracy that was all-consuming for several of the top officials in the district attorney's office and police departments as the feds pursued Burke, ultimately resulting in the 2016 conviction of Burke. Apparently, he also, this is allegedly, it's speculation, he also had snuff films in the duffel bag. That's a scary thing. Okay, and so they say Spoda and another former top prosecutor were later convicted of helping the cover-up. No police work is getting done, Prosecutor Lara Trainer-Scat said in the court of the top law enforcement officials in Suffolk County during this period. They're spending their day protecting Jimmy Burke. Oh my goodness. Okay, so what we're doing now is just reading through this article so that we understand the history, what happened before, what went wrong, what was the distraction. That's what we're doing now. So if you're only joining now, welcome. Okay, police and prosecutors clash. Cini, then a 35-year-old former federal prosecutor, was appointed police commissioner in late 2015. 2 years later, he was elected district attorney after Spoda was indicted. In both positions, Cini said he sought to revive the Gilgo Beach case that Burke and Spoda had left in disarray. But Cini's efforts would soon be hampered by more internal conflict. Cini attempted to re-involve the FBI in the case. His office recruited experts in technical investigations and bought expensive high-tech equipment to vacuum up DNA and reduce the area where cell phone data suggested their suspect resided. By 2021, Cini said they had whittled the pool of homes where the killer may have lived from around 1,250 to 200. basic vetting of those residents produced what Cindy called a large sheet of possible suspects. But investigating each of those possible suspects required the police department's homicide squad, including the detective, esteemed by his colleagues for an encyclopedic knowledge of the case dating back years. Portela was a Burke-era appointee to the case, having been put on the investigation in 2013. He worked the case out of the Gilgo room, packed with filing cabinets and boxes from the investigation. Okay. When the previous lead detective on the case retired in late 2015, around when Cindy became commissioner, Portela took over the lead role. Cindy said that Portela was kept on, alongside new detectives and FBI agents, because of his institutional knowledge. But led by Portela, the homicide detectives on the case clashed with Cindy and Howard Master, a Yale-educated former federal prosecutor, who Cindy put in charge of the Gilgo Beach case in 2020. That's why the district attorney, you've heard him say a little bit the dysfunction that existed, right? So here they say Suffolk County Police Department. A poster lists personal details of 5 other women whose bodies were found near Gilgo Beach in 2010 and 2011. Okay. Former law enforcement officials aligned with Cindy said that homicide detectives failed to perform basic investigative tasks to reduce the pool of potential suspects. Like, they kept just chipping away and slowly but surely getting there, but not really like doing it. Like, just do it, focus, right? Which is why the police commissioner, Harrison, when he came in, he's like, right, you're not going to be catching cases out there. Some of you are assigned only to this case. So we went over what his strategy was to get the focus redirected, to get the case moving, to get the FBI on board. I think he did such a good job. Okay, so we continue on. One former official said that when prosecutors pushed the homicide squad to produce long requested dossiers on the residents in the area where they were focused, the detectives gave them a couple of recent printouts from a law enforcement search program. I was like, are you serious? That official said, what have you done? The detectives didn't take kindly to being told how to investigate, another former law enforcement official said. Their philosophy was they investigate and we prosecute, and they kind of wanted to keep it that way. For their part, homicide detectives considered Cindy and Master to be micromanagers, demanding weekly meetings and constantly hectoring them to investigate people that they'd already ruled out. And led by Portela, some didn't trust the narrowed-down area where Cindy directed them to focus, wanting to investigate suspects outside of it. Multiple law enforcement sources said that one of the disagreements arose over the former police officer in Massapequa Park, whom they said the prosecutor's office considered a top suspect, even as homicide detectives were confident that he was not. Cindy declined to comment on that person specifically, but said that of course there were a number of people of interest who fit our profile, whom we wanted worked up from an investigative standpoint. Now remember, if you go back to the interview we just listened to with Nikki, who apparently went on a date with Rex in 2015 in the summer, she was saying that he said, well, a cop could do it. Oh man, imagine if he actually knew this cop and worked with the cop. If that's, I don't know, they're saying he's the sole suspect in the Gilgo 4 case, but like, man, imagine those other bodies and things. You just don't know. Who's this other suspect, right? Okay, so they say Cindy declined to comment on that person specifically, but said that of course there were a number of people of interest who fit our profile, whom we wanted worked up from an investigative standpoint. At no point was I or any senior member of my team fixated on any particular suspect to the exclusion of others. Cindy said that his attempts to remove Portela came to a head in 2021 when he was informed by Suffolk police brass that the FBI was not going to invest more resources into the case if Portela remained on. Law enforcement officials said that a homicide supervisor finally removed Portela after the supervisor was threatened with demotion by his own higher-ups. Okay, long-awaited arrest. We're almost there now. The break that led to Human's arrest came quickly after Tierney took office last year. He assigned a task force from 4 law enforcement agencies who conducted a comprehensive review of every item of evidence and information in this investigation, according to the bail application. During that review, a New York State trooper found the detail. Well done to that New York State trooper. Okay, found the detail about the Chevy Avalanche. A secretive flurry of investigation followed over the next 16 months, strengthening the case against Hurman before he was arrested. There's plenty of work yet to be done. The 4th Gilgo Beach murder, in which Hurman is a suspect but not yet charged, a potential trial in which Tierney plans to be the lead prosecutor, and 6 more unsolved murders which may not be linked to Hurman. Police have indicated that they do not believe Gilbert's death was a homicide. Interesting. RDW, welcome to Grizzly supporter. Okay, and so But on Long Island, blame shifting has erupted over the case's past delays, while top county officials continue to clash. Those aligned with the prosecutors and police have faulted the other for failing to close the case sooner. A former law enforcement official posited that if the detectives had backgrounded each person of interest under Cindy as they were asked, Human could have been caught years earlier. But two current law enforcement officials with direct knowledge of the case against Human said that investigative findings from Cindy's tenure played no significant role in finding him. I wonder. It just shows they were so close. They just needed that, as we would say in South Africa, they needed that vuma. Vuma is like, come on, apply some throttle there. Just like they need that passion, that determination. You know? So I'm glad they got that. Okay, so they said the case against Yerman consisted of the old witness statements leading them to him, which is from 2010. Amberlynn Costello's roommate, oh my word. Okay, that was such a significant critical piece that. So, old witness statements leading them to him, the FBI cell data analysis completed in 2012, and investigative steps such as mitochondrial DNA comparison performed using hair investigators had for more than a decade, taken after the new administration zeroed in. I do not know how the law enforcement personnel who earned the credit of solving this case used the work we did, Cindy responded. I'm just thrilled that the case has been solved. He had previously touted his administration's work as vital, saying that a real key ingredient to the success of this case throughout the years was the collaboration between the Suffolk County Police Department and the Suffolk County DA's office. Even the announcement of Human's arrest, a jubilant moment for public officials on the island, was indicative of simmering tensions. Tierney's office worried for months about tipping off Human, especially after Cindy gave an interview in January detailing his administration's use of cell site data. And we saw that Rexy, he was Googling about this, like, oh man, are they going to crack the case with this new cell site data or what? So if you missed that, just check out the episode where we read through the whole probable cause affidavit. Okay, so this is like article time. It's not quite document time. It's long article time. Hope you're enjoying it with me here. So there was an interview given. Oh, damn. They were worried that Rex Human would be tipped off. Tierney's office responded by sending out letters to dozens of former law enforcement officials in the case, including Cindy, ordering them not to discuss confidential information. Two law enforcement officials involved in the case said task force members were also under strict orders not to share information with Steve Bellone, a long-time county executive who previously appointed Burke, the later convicted police chief. It was believed by members of the task force that if he would learn about the investigation, he would seek to get publicity out of it at the expense of catching a serial killer. One of those law enforcement officials said of Bellone. Instead, they said the top elected official in the county was told about Human's impending arrest on July 13th, the night the architect was quietly taken into custody near his office in Manhattan. If you missed that video where we saw how he got arrested, check it out as well on the playlist. Tierney planned to announce the indictment the following afternoon at a news conference at the DA's office. Because Tierney said he didn't want to mix politics with law enforcement, according to the officials, no politicians were invited. Bellone beat him to it. The morning after the arrest, he had his own lectern set up in front of Human's ramshackle house in Massapequa Park. Joined by Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison, Bellone heralded the arrest and assured residents that we have never stopped working on this case. This is hectic. This is like we're spilling the tea over here, you know? Like what happened here? Damn. In law enforcement circles, criticism flew that Bellone was attempting to upstage Tierney, but Bellone told the Post that as news began to leak about the arrest, bringing a crowd to the house already swamped with police, he arranged the news conference out of an obligation to inform the public, not to grandstand. There was not anything remotely political in my remarks, Bellone said, and that's an absurd suggestion. Okay. Is it absurd? I don't know. Sounds a little bit like you wanted to be there, sir. We will give you the benefit of the doubt, though, okay? Thank you for speaking to the people and for that press conference. Damn. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope that it makes some sense. I hope that you could see the background and everything. And I will keep you posted. I have a playlist on this case, so make sure that you check it out if you haven't yet. We have done an extensive deep dive on this Long Island serial killer case. I started covering it in 2022 when they released Shannon Gilbert's 911 call, which was actually a really good strategy from the police commissioner, Harrison, to do that, to build trust with the public again after some people ruined it. Yes, even the FBI was reluctant to work with the Suffolk County Police Department based on what this dude did, the damage that he did. So, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe.